Welcome to our first podcast of Bringing the Heat. Um, so just to get kind of like introduce everyone, I'm not the host right now, but Braden is the host for today. I'm Austin, and then the person at the bottom is Tyler. We're all related to each other, so we're kind of just doing this because, we thought it would be a fun source of, entertainment to do and for people out there that are listening, just to, kind of listen in and get some sports talk. So, I guess we'll go ahead and start off with a couple of our first topics that we want to talk about. I'll hand it over to Braden real quick.
Yeah, so just to kind of tag along with what Austin said, for the first episode, it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different sports. As the episodes go on and as like big sports events happen, we will kind of like roll into more specified podcasts related to just specific things. So as March rolls in, we're gonna do episodes with March Madness. And then as like the summer rolls in, we'll do stuff with like the NBA playoffs and the finals. And then as the NFL season rolls in, obviously we'll do stuff with that and college football. So my first question, just to kind of get everything started, Austin, who do you have? So this our first section will be for NCAA basketball. For our podcast, we're mainly focusing on NCAA basketball, NBA, NFL, and what's called college football. So Austin, who do you have as your Final Four teams, your championship game, and your champion?
So, based on the research I did and just based on common knowledge, I honestly, you got to put UConn in there. I mean, that's a given. I mean, they won it last year, and not only did they win it last year, but they blew out every team they played by at least 20 points, including the championship game that they played against San Diego State. So you got to put them there, and they basically returned their entire team. The only person that they lost was trying to think the guy who's on the Pelicans right now. I forgot his name, and I have to remember that later. But that's pretty much the only guy they lost, and they've been consistently just destroying team after team. So you gotta put UConn in there. They're the only one seed that I have in the Final Four, and the only reason why is because last year none of the number one seeds made it because I just don't think that the number one seeds really live up to expectations of what
Like the
people are
hype.
supposed to. Like the hype,
Yeah,
yeah, what they're trying to like. Purdue lost first round last year. No one saw that coming. I mean, people saw that they were going to lose, but they didn't see losing to FDU last year.
yeah,
Alabama
and I
lost.
feel like every now and then you have your one seed that
Yeah,
lives up to
and
your expectations.
I think it was Gonzaga. No, Alabama last year was number one seed. Ran into a really good defensive team in San Diego State.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just
Kansas.
whoever really gets hot, honestly, in
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
March.
it's not. I've always believed that the tournament's based on who's the hottest team, not the best team.
Yeah.
And but if you look at UConn just straight across the board, they're just such a dominant team. They're the only out of between Arizona, Purdue, and Houston, I just think they're the better team of
Yeah.
the one seeds, and I think that they could just run through every team that they play. So I got to put them there. The other team, another team that I had making this might be a surprise to most people, but I see Creighton making the Final Four, and the reason
I
I
mean, they're
say that
solid. I mean, they beat UConn themselves.
yeah.
they
They've
did beat.
had, they've had some pretty solid wins.
I also, if not a lot of people remember, they did make it. They were one play away from making it to the Final Four last year
Yeah.
between them and San Diego State. They lost Ryan Nembhard. I know that, but they're still a great all-around team. I know they just lost to St. John's, but St. John's is a pretty good coach team. Rick Pitino's a great coach. Props to him what he's done for St. John's. But Creighton, I think they're a contender in the Big East tournament upcoming, and they're also just a really good team overall. So I have them coming out of one of the other regions. um, I also have because I'm looking at the different regions of the projections for the bracket. I don't see Purdue making it. I didn't think they were going to make the Final Four last year.
Purdue's typically not a dominant team though.
I just don't see
When it
like they
comes
have.
like they're an NBA reference. They're kind of like the Sixers, where they're dominant in the regular season. But once it comes postseason in like March,
I
it's
could
really
see. I could
Yeah,
see. I don't see Florida Atlantic making that much noise like they did last year because last year no one took them seriously because They also only had 3 losses last year. They were insanely good. I know they still have their star player, but I just don't think they have one good win over
Yeah.
Arizona. That's
I don't
it.
think they have the firepower that they used or that they had last
Not
year
not
to.
not that they had last year. And plus, the teams they ran through last year weren't quality, other than Tennessee. But Tennessee doesn't really do well in the postseason. I just didn't really see a team outside of them that was really good enough to make
Yeah.
the Final Four. I also looking at the bracket here. I think Benone Stones. I think South Carolina or Kansas could make a run to the Final Four.
Yeah.
It kind of really
South
depends.
Carolina's had some good SEC wins over some or
They're a good
some
team. Like I know they got blown
hefty.
out by Auburn,
Yeah.
but they they've been a pretty. I think their coach is it's his first
They're
year
one of
as
those.
their
They're one of the teams that, like, at the beginning of the season, they never really expected much, but they kind of popped out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also have Marquette possibly making the Final Four. Tyler Kolek, we'll get to that later. Is second in National Player of the Year ranking or voting. I know they lost to UConn and they lost badly, but other than that one loss that they have, they've dominated a lot of the games that they've played this year. He's really good. Their team is the reason why he's good. He played last year. They were really dominant last year, and I think he took a kind of a step up this year as far as his play and elevating, his teammates and stuff like that. I also see Dayton surprisingly making. I know that they play in
Oh wow.
not so good of a conference, but I think Dayton is a team that a lot of people might not see. I don't think they could go to the Final Four, but I think they can go to Sweet 16 just because of
I don't think they'd be able to live up to that OB
yeah.
Toppin
I
team.
mean, I mean, the George Mason game just showed you how weak their offensive defense can
Yeah,
be,
but
like how vulnerable.
a lot of teams have
Well, I
struggles in
know,
certain.
but that's just, I mean, it's against a George Mason team who's not, I wouldn't say they're not top tier. They could make that tournament if they have the resume to. I haven't looked into it, but they're not like a dominant team who should be beating them by that much.
I
Yeah.
also so the Final Four teams I have UConn, Creighton, South Carolina, and I have North Carolina as well. I think that even though that I'm a North Carolina fan, I think that just if you look on paper and if you look at the team, they're the most experienced team in probably the entire tournament. They've got two really experienced seniors who played all the way back until the 2021 season. That team basically, other than most of the other team, the two players that were really key players in that tournament run for UNC a couple years ago, they have experience in the championship game. They have experience running through much better teams on paper than what they had stacked up against. So I think that if they hit I know they have a couple really bad losses in the last couple of
Yeah.
weeks, but I mean, RJ Davis, my God, man, he went for 42 last night, and he
Yeah,
basically
that was ridiculous.
he had 75% of his team's points, and I don't think another player on his team scored above 8, which is wild given the fact that he absolutely carried his team
Yeah.
on his back. And if it wasn't for Zach Edey, he would win National Player of the Year without a doubt. I mean, you rarely see, we'll get to that later, but you rarely see a guard average that many points
Yeah.
at his height,
Yeah.
especially in a Power Five conference. But
Well,
so
then
I
who
have
do you
North
have in
Carolina.
And one of
your
the
championship
with one
game?
of the biggest schools in the
Yeah,
country.
I have North Carolina, UConn, Creighton, and South Carolina are my picks.
Well, who's your champion or championship game, and who's your champion?
UConn. Championship game based on the rate here. Um, I think that it would probably be between Creighton. I think Creighton could make it to the national championship game. Creighton and UConn, or
It's not
Creighton
taking
and,
it all.
yeah, I think UConn's going to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just straight up. I mean, I think they could be the first team to go back to back since Florida did it in 08 and 07.
Yeah.
Um, I just think they're that dominant. So I think I don't know who exactly they would play, but I know whoever they would play, they would just absolutely just
Yeah.
spank. Wouldn't be close.
All right, Tyler, who you got for your final four?
So first team that Austin didn't mention this team, but I believe they're the best all around team in college basketball, and that's Houston. I mean, they average 74 points a game as a team, and
Houston's
they
strong.
crash the boards a lot, averaging 36, and then they get others involved, averaging 13 assists a game. And their defense is what'll probably take them deep. They hold their team or the opposing team to around 56 points per game, and in March, 56 will not get you a win.
Yeah.
So that's why I believe Houston. They're big, they're physical. That's why I believe they can stop their opponents, and they can just be
Plus,
that lockdown team in the tournament.
plus they've kind of proven this year that they switched from the A10 or the AAA or what was the term
AAC.
AAC, yeah, conference last year, and they made the jump to the Big 12, and everyone was like, oh, they're gonna run into a brick wall. They're not, and to be honest, they lost to Iowa State and some other team at TCU. They lost to Iowa State and TCU in
Which are
back-to-back
both
weeks.
two strong teams.
Yeah.
Iowa
Yeah,
State's at
yeah.
the top 10,
And
and
everyone was
TCU's
like,
a strong team.
oh, hit the panic button, like
Yeah.
they're a bad team, like whatever. But
And they're still in the top. They're still at the top of their conference
yeah,
too.
they have some really good quality wins. They beat Baylor. They just beat Baylor. They beat Iowa. They gave Iowa State a butt whooping. They've just been running through the Big 12. I think they're sitting in first right now. That I think about it, yeah, they're sitting at first in the conference
Yeah,
right now. And of the likes of Kansas, Iowa State, they have TCU, they have Texas Tech, they have Baylor, all these really good teams that are probably all going to make the tournament. And they have wins over all of them other than Kansas. But they have a
yeah,
matchup
because
against Kansas at the end of the season.
right now, their conference has currently
Yes.
9 teams in the bracket right
Yeah,
now.
Big 12, argue with the wall. They're the best conference in
Yeah.
college basketball. It's not even close.
All right, Tyler, who else
All
you
right.
got?
So my second team, Austin mentioned this team as well. I have UConn as well. People don't give them as much respect, I feel like, and they probably have one of the best rosters from top to bottom, and I believe they could repeat with Coach Early. And then for my third team, this team has been questionable at times, but also has been at the highest. I'm Kentucky. I mean, that's my team. I know I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but they have the highest floor, and sometimes when you have the highest floor, you just have to go with your gut. And they also have the lowest floor, which sometimes you just want to throw up that pick and be like, you know what, I can't go with Kentucky. But I think it's just going to depend on how long their defense can hold up in the tournament and how far Dillingham, Shepard, and Reeves can take them. And then I feel like it's kind of a wild card team, but I have Clemson. They're hot right now. They've won their
PJ
last
Hall.
5 of 6 games, and especially with the huge win versus UNC and close losses to NC State and Duke this season. I think they can give a lot of people a run for their money.
Yeah. Well, who you got your championship game?
I have to go with Houston. They're too big. They're too physical. They're too much of a defensive minded team that you can throw them out there and you wouldn't have any worry of who you're going against,
Yeah.
except for maybe Zach Edey. But I don't see Purdue giving them a run for their money. I don't see Purdue being able to get out and run with them like they can get out and run with other teams.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say Houston, and then I don't know. Who I would be able to choose between Kentucky and Clemson. I mean, that'll be a good ACC SEC matchup. But
Clemson beat
if
them in football earlier this year.
yeah,
Um,
I don't know who I would go with, so I'm just gonna leave it at those two teams. I'm just gonna have to leave it at those two. I don't know who I would have to choose because you have two different teams who are who have two different styles, and it's just a lot to choose from because you can go with Kentucky's ceiling, or you can also just pull them down for how low they've been. But you can also choose Clemson, who has been pretty consistent,
Yeah.
but hasn't peaked at their highest. I feel like so you don't know what that is, and I think I'm just gonna have to leave it between those two teams.
Well, who's your champ then?
I think Houston. They're proven night in night out on what they can do, how they can beat people, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side.
Yeah.
And I think Houston will probably be the team to come out on top this year.
Yeah.
And if not, it'll be a tough guess on who can.
Yeah, I mean Houston's a strong team. But as far as my Final Four, I feel like one that kind of goes under the radar is Auburn. I think Auburn has a good enough resume to make it to the Final Four. They have wins over Ole Miss when they were ranked 22. They had an 18-point victory against Alabama where they were ranked 16, and they also had a 40-point win versus number 11 South Carolina. And I mean they have enough firepower on that team, and obviously they have Bruce Pearl who can lead that
Great
team to
coach.
something good.
Great
yeah,
coach.
I mean he's an outstanding coach. And you also have one of their senior superstars, Jalen Williams, who's averaging a ridiculous amount of points for that team and producing every single night that he's on the floor. So for my first one, I had Auburn. I think Auburn's a team that can definitely put their foot on the gas and make it to the Final Four. Um, and unanimous between us three, I have UConn. I said there's a chance that they could be back-to-back champions. They have a lot of people that stayed from the last year's team, except for a few people. So as far as the team chemistry and the team dynamic, won't be much different than it was the year prior. So they already showed what they can do. So they're going to try to do it again.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to not it's hard to choose a team that has as good of a coach as they have and
yeah,
has the experience at the same time.
yeah,
And it's just hard to like not choose them,
yeah,
especially when winning last year.
yeah. Um, And my third team, I don't, neither of y'all said them, is Duke. I think Duke has another strong resume. They're projected to be a 3 seed right now. They haven't won a championship since 2015. So obviously they're hungry for a championship. Their fan base is hungry for a championship.
I mean, Kyle
Um,
Filipowski's healthy going forward, though.
what?
That's assuming Kyle Filipowski's healthy going forward, even though
Yeah.
he's
So that's my other point. I mean, you have Jaron McCain, who's arguably one of the best behind RJ
If
Davis, is probably one of the best
if
point
not
guards.
the best guard in
Yeah.
the nation.
Yeah. And then you also have Kyle Filipowski, who is in the running. I wouldn't say he's leading, but he's definitely in the running for National Player of the Year. Outstanding
he wasn't
player.
in the top 10 rankings,
Okay, but I'm saying he's an
but he's
outstanding
good enough
player.
of a caliber player to
Yes.
consider for.
Um, the only problem I have with Duke, as far as them only making it to the Final Four, maybe the Elite Eight, is that at the beginning of their season they had losses to Arizona and Arkansas, which in the beginning of the season they looked like a really good team and they even lost then. So what's saying they can't lose now? But I still think they can make it to the Final Four. They also do have a lot of tournament experience on that team. Not only
Yeah.
on their coaching staff but on their players, because I mean they make the tournament year after year. They may not make it far, but they at least make the tournament year after year. Um, and then this one is my underdog. I'm not gonna say it, I'm just gonna talk about them before I say it. They have wins over Texas, Oklahoma, BYU, and Kansas, who are all four ranked wins.
Is it
Um,
Iowa State?
huh?
Is it Iowa State?
Uh-uh.
No.
They've proven that they can win against those tough teams, like those big teams, especially in those tough uh in conference game like environments. It's really hard to win those. They have a senior guard who's averaging 15, almost 16 points a game. And they have five players averaging over 10 points a game, which is really, really hard to beat. Um, but I have Texas Tech. I think that they're a solid team out of the Big 12.
Did they
Um,
beat Kansas this year?
yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah, they did.
I think
Wasn't Kansas
Texas Tech
last
is one of
year.
those teams where I think because I mean, like I said, they've already had experience, which in my personal opinion, I think that teams that can make it to the Final Four are teams who have had big games that they've proven that they can win in the regular season. That when it comes time for March, there's
They're
no
able to make
question that
winning
they can win
plays
those big
too.
games. Yeah. So, and then in my championship game, I have Duke and UConn, just because I feel like that would be a throwdown between both teams.
That
Um,
would be a great matchup.
yeah, and then I really can't go with anyone else but UConn. I mean, UConn's a repeat, and I think they're a solid enough team. Just like Houston, their team is above caliber, above what most college programs offer as far as team like dynamic and scoring and like efficiency. So I think that Houston or UConn, but I have to take UConn on the repeat. So all right. So next question I have is who do y'all believe is going to be a first round exit come March? Tyler, I'll let you go first.
Um, like shockingly,
And we're starting
surprisingly,
with the National Player of the Year, I thought.
No, it's
yeah,
Austin.
we
It's
were we were starting with national
No,
players.
the when we left off, we were talking about the National Player of the Year.
Let's just not do first round exits because I don't have any. That's I was just trying to just
Yeah.
throw shit out of
I
my head.
literally have three.
I know, but I didn't have it. But all right,
Just
dab, reset, and go.
I'm
You
putting
can't.
that in bloopers. He's so disappointed.
I want to go get the milk.
All right, all right.
penis. Okay.
Barilla.
All
We were talking about National Player of the Year.
right. For the next question, I think it's probably important that we do talk about who we think the National Player of the Year is going to be. I guess I can go ahead and start that one off. Now, this isn't biased. This isn't like I didn't want to pick who I thought was going to win. I wanted to pick someone who I thought could be an underlier, someone who could win it, who's lower on the totem pole but has a good chance to win. And for that, my National Player of the Year is Kevin McCullar, sorry, from Kansas. He's the point guard. What? What? No, what?
He didn't even cry. I was looking at this. He doesn't even average over 15.
Here's some stats for you. 19.8 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game, 1.5 steals per game, shooting 36.1 from three, and he had 34 points against Yale, and he doubled his averages of points this year compared to last year.
It's Yale, first off, and second off, where his team is not great. He's not even.
Stats speak for themselves.
Yes, but
Also,
if you look at
I hope you
team,
understand that when it comes to National Play of the Year, MVP, whatever it is for any sort of sport, Heisman even, it doesn't matter how. If you're gonna say that, how did Jayden Daniels win the Heisman this year? His team sucked in football.
because here's
How
the
come he
difference.
won it?
People tend to forget what the actual word is supposed to mean. That
Exactly.
word.
National
No, hold
Player
on.
of the Year is the player
Listen.
that performs at a high level, and that's why
Listen.
I think that he
The
can win it.
award goes to someone, the person where if you take that player off the team, they're buns. They're straight buns. They're just
They
they're
don't have
dog.
another point
Like
guard that can produce like that.
RJ Davis.
No, I think Kansas doesn't have another player that can produce like that.
Bro, their entire team is like a bunch
No,
of
like a
really
point
good 4 or
guard
5.
that can perform like
A
that.
ball handler,
Thank you.
somebody that can get up and down the court,
Thank you.
give everybody the ball,
Who's
and can
that
also
Harris
score and
dude?
defend.
Juwan
Yes,
Harris.
but he
He's their
can't.
point guard. He's good.
He's not really a scorer.
Oh boy. But personally, that's what I think. I'm not saying he definitely does not have the best odds to win it. I just have that as a person who, because I didn't want to go with Zach Edey or RJ Davis or Kyle Filipowski. I didn't want to go with someone who names get brought up for that award all the time. I wanted to bring someone into the conversation. Like
Yeah, I see.
Zach Edey has a better chance to win it. RJ Davis has a better chance to win it. Filipowski has a better chance to win it. Like I said, I just wanted to bring that name into the conversation. I'm not saying he's gonna win it. I'm not saying he has the best chances to win it. I just wanted to bring him in.
Fair enough.
That's fair enough.
And McCullough, if you look at McCullough's highlights, I mean, he's a pretty damn good player. And I know that you watched UNC all season, but if you watch a Kansas game and you see which right now they're playing against BYU, I think he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, I
So
got to give some respect to that pick. Watched a couple Kansas games, and he stood out more than any player on the court. He's
like
putting up the
let's see.
numbers for a player of the year. He's putting up the good shooting numbers, even though it is 36% from the what did you say, from the field or from three?
From three.
From three. That's
He's
still
not even the best.
average.
He's not even the best player on his team.
Hunter Dick. I mean,
Hunter
Hunter
Dickinson's in
Dickinson's
the
there.
race
I know
for.
he's there,
He's in the race
but
because he
like,
averages 10 boards and he
okay,
averages 18. And he's shooting 55% from the field. He's shooting 69% from the free throw line. And his 3-point percentage is basically about the same as Kevin McCullough's. And he averages he averages more blocks, less turnovers, more steals. He's not even the best player on his team. I get where you're coming from because of the points. That's the only reason I would put him in that conversation. But Hunter Dickinson, it's really by name at this point. You're not gonna even if you have like a guy like Kevin McCullough, he's just not name brand like Hunter Dickinson is. Hunter Dickinson was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He has a big name in the portal this year. He
Yeah, but you can't say he doesn't deserve it because his team is bad or his team's not performing. Again, I'll go back to that Jane Daniels example. He's a damn good quarterback. There's a reason he won the Heisman.
yeah,
But
but
if you're gonna make the argument that they should have a Heisman, or if the winner of any award should be a player that's on a good team, I'll ask you, why did Christian McCaffrey win the MVP? He was on a good team. He had a
that's
good season.
football. That's football. That's not.
Also, so is Heisman. How
Yes,
come
I
how come
understand that.
Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't win it? He was a hell of a good player, probably going to go top two, top three. I mean, you have to think about it, Austin. It's not always the person who's on the best team or who performs the best on the best team. It's the person who performs the best, and that if they take them off the team, they would be a completely different team.
You're proving my point, but here's the difference. Kevin McCullough, like I said, Kevin McCullough's not even the best player on his team. They went he got hurt earlier in the season. This is why he's only played 23 games. Hunter Dickinson's played all 27. Yeah, he's played all 27. Kevin McCullough missed 4 games due to an injury. I don't remember when exactly it was, but they won. I think
I
they
mean, you
won.
can't help injuries though.
I understand. I get that. Here's the thing, though. He played less games. Two, any player, the best quality in a player. I hear this all the time. The best quality in a player is availability. I understand if you get hurt and all that stuff like that, but here's the difference. You take Kevin McCullough off that team, in that 4 games that they were missing, they beat 2 ranked teams. I'm not saying that he's the reason, him not playing was the reason why they won. I'm just saying if he was not playing during that stretch of games, which goes to show that he wasn't necessarily integral for them to win those games. You take RJ Davis off of North Carolina. You take Zach Edey is the reason why I don't think Zach Edey deserves it. You take Zach Edey off of Purdue, they're still a good team.
No,
But
they're not the same team.
I know, understand that. But if you take Zach Edey off that Purdue team, they're missing size, they're missing length, they're missing defensive presence, they're missing a rim protector. They don't have anyone that's really as tall as he is on that team. So, and you take Dalton Connect, who's on the Tennessee Volunteers, you take him off the team, they're crap. They're crap because he plays hero ball the entire time,
Okay,
which is why
then who do you have as the national player of the year?
I'd separate it in two different parts. Who do I think deserves it? Who do I think is going to win it? I think Zach Edey is going to win it. He's basically had it locked up since mid December. Um, who do I think deserves it? And I'm not saying this because I'm biased because I'm a North Carolina fan, but I think RJ Davis deserves it because for 2 reasons. One, I mentioned this earlier, you rarely see a guard average 20 points per game, 20 plus points per game in a Power Five conference. The ACC is a really good conference. I don't care what anyone else says. Oh, they're crap. They only have 2 ranked teams. They're the ACC in football even this year they beat up on each other. They're a good conference because they're all pretty much on the same wave, the same level. Versus other conferences, there's a wide gap between the best and the worst. Same with the SEC. There's a gap between the best and the worst, and it's always been that way for a really long time. The ACC has always been collectively good as a whole, for the most part. They just all beat up on each other. So the fact that RJ Davis one is carrying his team every single night, he took an entire leap from last year. Last year, Caleb Love was the guy. Caleb Love was on the team. He was the guy. RJ Davis was kind of like the backseat guard who was second to RJ Davis as far as points and just production. Armando Bacot was the best player on the team last year and the year before. He has not risen up to his potential this year. I mean, if you look at his RJ Davis's stats, he's averaging 21.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, 3.4 assists, which means he can facilitate the ball. And he's shooting 43% from the field goal range and almost 40% from three. And if you look at everyone else, like, yeah, Tyler Kolek, which is who plays for Marquette, he's averaging 15, 4 rebounds, basically 8 assists, and is shooting 48% from the field. I just don't think and recently he's been playing much better. If you look at the top four are Dalton Knet, Tyler Kolek, RJ Davis, and Zach Edey. I think Zach Edey's solely going to win it because he's averaging 23.7, 11 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and he's shooting an impressive 62.7% from the field. I don't care if you're 7 foot tall, or I don't care if you're 7'4", shooting almost 62% from the field in college is pretty impressive. I don't care what anyone says. So I think that he's going to win it. Do I think he should win it? No. because, and I know he can't help the fact that he's 7'4", but I don't think a guy who's tall, because he's not going to succeed in the NBA. It's just not going to. Someone like him is built to succeed in college. It's the same with, don't hate me, I think Oscar Tshiebwe is a great player, but he was dominant rebounder in college. But when he gets to the pros, he's going to be outmatched by a lot of aggressive, taller,
He's
more.
just going to become a nose for the ball kind of defensive presence guy.
Exactly. And he's not the caliber player that he was in college, because Oscar Tshiebwe was dominant when he was on UK. That man was averaging, that man could give you 20 boards a night, no questions asked. But when he got to the pros, I don't think he's consistently been in and out of the rotation for the Pacers this year. But and so I feel like he's going to end up exactly like that. RJ Davis would make a great fit for an NBA team that is missing a guard position, someone who can go and get his own shot, someone who can go off the dribble. He's a very talented ball handler. He knows where to pass the ball. He doesn't really turn the ball over a lot. And the same goes for Dalton Kennett. He has been on a tear in the SEC. I mean, man's averaging 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and he's shooting 47% from the field. And he is literally the only reason why Tennessee is as good as they are, because that team is not great without him. And it's mainly, like I said, because he plays hero ball most of the time, and he just goes, and he honestly kind of reminds me of Carson Edwards, kind of, because he's like, the Carson Edwards was like that one really good player on that Purdue team, and he basically, everyone just handed him the ball and was just like, go do your thing, go to work, just go score, go get a bucket, do this, do that, do that. And that's basically what he reminds me of. I don't think Tyler Kolek should be in that conversation despite the success that his team's had. I don't see it, because they're not even the best team in his conference. I just don't think that he should be. Purdue's the best team in their conference. North Carolina's the best team in their conference. Tennessee is arguably, I know they're not in first place, but they're in second, and they're right behind Alabama, who's not been playing great lately. Tennessee's the best team in the SEC.
All right,
Marquette's the best team in the Big East, but that's just me.
Tyler, who you got?
So I'm kind of like an RJ Davis too. I mean, he's a 20 plus point per game scorer as a guard. He's been on fire lately. I mean, and I'm pretty sure UNC, what, is a 1 seed,
2 seed.
right?
Two.
They're a 2
They
seed.
were 1 seed, but they lost some bad games.
Well, I mean, still, I believe if they can finish in the AP poll, if they can finish a top 4 team in the nation above Purdue and can finish as a 1 seed in the bracket,
Because they
I
still got
think,
Duke left. They still
yeah,
have Duke.
I think RJ Davis has a better chance of winning it against Zach Edey, because I feel like right now, if if Tennessee if Tennessee was at a higher rank in the AP poll, then
They're at
Dalton
like
Connect
five.
would be more up there. But RJ, it's just between RJ Davis and Zach Edey right now, and I think if RJ does what he needs to do for the rest of the year, finish top 4 in the nation as a 1 seed in the bracket, and finish above Purdue, then I think his odds against Zach Edey are in favor of him.
All right. Well, hot players are one thing, but hot teams are what win games in March. Obviously, as we talked about with our Final Four predictions. So, also, who do you have as your hottest team in the college basketball right now?
Well, if you really look at who's playing well, you could sit there and say, "Oh, if you had asked me that question about a week ago before UConn lost to Creighton, I would have said UConn." Because they were riding like a 14, 15 game winning streak. That included a dominant blowout win over Marquette, wins against Seton Hall, like a bunch of decently really good Big East teams. I would have said that they were the hottest team, but if you look at the team that's probably playing the best right now, I'd probably have to go with Houston, because they just picked up a huge win over Iowa State at Iowa State, the team that beat them earlier this season in the first game that they played in the Big 12. I think that they are finding their identity at this point in time. I think they realize that they can run the table. They can compete with anyone in the Big 12. They can compete with anyone in college basketball. Their coach is one of the best coaches in college basketball, hands down. Sampson, fantastic coach, one of the best coaches, probably top 5 coach of college basketball right now in the league right now. He knows how to coach his players. He knows how to get them ready for games and stuff like that. I think that Houston's finding their defensive identity. Their offense is clicking, And honestly, it's comes more to a surprise because they lost Marcus Sasser last year, who went I think like top 15 in the draft. He was really good. He was really their only really source of offense. They also had Jarris Walker last year, who was really good and very good defensively. They lost a lot of guys last year, and I didn't think they would really compete as well, especially from the switch from their previous conference to the Big 12. But they are playing really good basketball right now. I would not be shocked if they rolled into that game against Kansas here in a couple of weeks and absolutely just blew the doors off them. Because I know they lost to Kansas earlier this year, but you can't sit there and tell me that playing in Allen Foghouse is like one of the hardest environments, if not the hardest environment to play in college basketball. I mean, just in general, like I just don't think there's another stadium that's really hard to beat that team in. And I don't think they've lost at home this year. Yeah, they haven't lost at home this year. They're really good at home. So that game was, I'm going to give them a little pass on that. But I think right now the hottest team in college basketball is Houston. They're playing really great ball right now.
I'll
Yeah,
agree
I'm
with
gonna have
that.
to agree with you. I mean, they get it done night in, night out. Offensive, defense, you name it, crashing the glass, scoring when needed, getting everyone involved. They're a big physical team. They'll run against anybody. I'd like their odds against anybody in the league in the NCAA. And they're gonna be scary coming March.
They also have three losses, which in the Big 12, they have three losses in the Big 12. You know how hard that
Well,
is?
with my take, I went a completely different direction. This team I think is heavily under the radar. Come March, they're definitely going to be, no matter what seed they are, they're definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with just because of how hot they are right now. Before I say their name, right now they're on a 13-game win streak in their conference play. It's the first time they've been ranked all season was this week, so they just became ranked. They are projected to make the tournament. They beat FAU, who was ranked 24 at the time, and they also beat
Um,
Memphis when they were ranked 10.
yeah, they did.
And they do have a player on the team averaging over 15 points a game, and he's shooting 43% from the field. And that team is University of Southern Florida,
They
USF.
also beat Memphis on that win
Uh,
streak. You forgot that they also beat Memphis on that win streak that they're on right
yeah.
now.
So they're on a tear right now. Through all their games, big or small opponents. I mean, they've proven that they can be ranked teams, and now they've finally been ranked. I think it's definitely a long-awaited time for them to be ranked, just because of how well they've been playing. But yeah, I think right now South Florida is one of the teams still to be reckoned with when it comes to March, and I think that they can take some tears with some good teams.
Shout out to BYU too this year.
Yeah.
Them coming over from their conference too and playing some really good ball. I mean, they beat Baylor a couple weeks ago. They've been ranked for majority of the season. They beat Iowa State too. They gave Houston a run for their money. They've been holding their own this year. They played a lot of ranked teams because the Big 12 is very competitive, but they also beat San Diego State at the beginning of this year. I think really a lot of the teams that came over from the AAC conference to Big 12 have been doing phenomenal this year. Cincinnati, BYU, UCF has been playing. I mean, they got a huge win against Kansas many weeks ago. They haven't really played really great other than that. But all the AAC teams that came over from last year, they're playing really good right now. They're playing hot basketball.
Yeah, I think BYU would probably be an underdog come in March.
Um, the next topic is more of an opinionated kind of thing. Obviously, we've seen it with, Caitlin Clark. We've seen it with Filipowski, where when it comes to like those big games, for teams at home, when they do win, obviously you have the court storming that's happening. Do you all have like any opinions or any takes on like preventions they could do, whether they should make it like, wait, you have to wait like a 2 minutes after, like, what do you think?
I so I feel like uh, to make it necessary and to make it fair to the students, if it's a hefty underdog at home and they beat a ranked team, it has to be a top 25 team, which most of the time you do storm the court for
Yeah,
that. But if it's an underdog facing a top 25 team and they beat them, I feel like the only necessary thing to do or storm the court for is a buzzer beater. Just storm the court for a buzzer beater.
like the
And then,
LSU.
yeah, like that, you can storm the court for that. Nobody got injured there. Everybody's excited. But if it's for a game like that Duke game where Filipowski got his,
Like they
or what
already
he
whooped
sprang
him.
his
Like
ankle or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, he sprained his ankle.
Caitlin Clark got like hit on the shoulder, and I think she was either out for a game or she was like on injury report for a period of time.
Yeah, I
Also, I'm
think
sorry, but Filipowski's a kind of a little bit of a baby. If I don't know if you watched the video, what
Yeah,
happened?
I agree with that. Like, there's a different way to go about it,
He
but
tripped the
he does
fan.
have a point that I feel that either what Tyler said about the buzzer beater should apply, or I'm trying to remember who was talking about it, but there was some coach who was referencing or who like got asked in an interview about the question of storming the court, and he said back when he was playing college, the way that they did it is if they won against the right team, they would let the players of the opposing team get off the court, like obviously shake the hands of the coaches and the players that they just played, let them get off the court, and then it's free reign after that.
yeah, that I totally agree with you. I think once the final buzzer goes off, and then the opposing team, whether home or away, let them at least get a couple steps away from off the court or to the
Yeah.
sideline, and
Just to make sure they're out of harm's
let the
way.
students have free range. Yeah,
And even then, even if they do like the Duke game, it's very hard to miss a guy who's towering over you, wearing different clothes than everyone else. And
yeah,
I feel like it's really hard to miss that. Um, so also just being like paying attention to your surroundings, I think is also kind of important for that too. Um,
yeah. It's kind of hard
so
to
yeah, your
miss
takes on it.
it's kind of hard to miss the guy that's
Yeah,
that tall and wearing blue, and everybody else is over here wearing like cream gold
and
or
black.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
All right, Austin, what do you think?
I mean, I think it's the whole idea of what should I say? Court storming. It's a tradition for a lot of schools. Like earlier this year, I remember watching GCU, which shout out to GCU by the way. They're playing.
Best
They
record in college
they
right
have the
now.
best record in college basketball right now. Just saying. I know they're not the best team in college basketball, but they've pretty much won like a lot of games this year. They only have like 3 or 2 losses or something like that. But they had a game against San Diego State earlier this year, and it was their first ever. Like I'm not saying I'm kidding. This it was like their first ever ranked win against any ranked team, and that deserves a court storming. I mean, that the fans have never experienced something like that. I got to experience storming the field at U of L football game a couple years ago, or 2 years ago, and then this year, and it was the best experience that I've probably had at school and college so far. So I think for one, for the fans, and for two, the also the players that play their hearts out every single night too. Like Wake Forest against that Duke game, they played so insanely hard in that game to beat Duke, and it was the first time they've beaten Duke at Wake Forest in I don't know how long. That that deserves a court storm. They don't really get to do stuff like that, so it's kind of really special for the fans and for the players. It also, if you look at, here's what I have a problem with though. If you look at that video of him, he didn't even try to run. He just sat there. Like I know that the situation, the way it unfolded, he didn't really have a lot of
Well,
time.
it's not all on the fans. It's also on the players.
Exactly,
yeah.
because if you look, Jared McCain sprinted off the court as the fans were running on, and he didn't get hurt. And Filipowski tripped a fan, and that's the reason why he got hurt. So I really don't have much sympathy for him about that. I'm not trying to sound like a mean person. I'm just saying that when you try to instigate something like that and something ends up resulting in you getting hurt, that should
Karma
not be
will come back.
that should not be on the fans' fault. And you can't sit there and then advocate by saying, "Hey, we need to get rid of court storming," when you're the reason why you got hurt. Like, because it also, like I said, it's special for the fans because it's important to them and it's important to the team. The like just having a moment like that to be able to celebrate something as amazing as that is for them. So I think that, and you have rules in place like what the SEC did this year, where like they fine teams for the SEC teams for storming the court. I think they're the only conference that does that, and it kind of sucks because it's like they don't really get to do stuff like that all the time, and so it's kind of special once in a blue moon kind of event, and they get fined for it. I understand part of that, like for the players' safety, but and Kentucky did it earlier this year, I think, against South Carolina when South Carolina was like blowing them out. Coach Calipari called his players to the sideline. Like, and they all ran. They all ran over to the sideline, and the fans and the players stormed the court, and no one got hurt. I wonder why. Or don't lose to the
Uh,
bad team. That's an option too. Then you don't have to have
That
the
yes, agreed.
like,
All right.
dude, come on. Why did you lose to Wake Forest? Don't lose that game if you don't,
Yeah,
don't sit there and say court storming is the problem. You know what the problem is? You lost to Wake Forest.
had an opportunity. They tried to get Filipowski to shoot a three and turn the ball over.
You had every opportunity to win that game, and you didn't.
So our last and final question to this episode, um, obviously this is related to the NBA coming over to college and vice versa. Obviously, Tyler would know a lot because he is a big LeBron fan, big Lakers fan. Uh, what's your all standpoint on Bronny starting as a freshman right now at USC? Now, just so you all know and get a quick overview, right now he's averaging 20 minutes a game, which is pretty solid, especially for a freshman. Um, but here's where the downfall comes. Oh, well, he's also shooting 37.1 from the field, which is for a freshman, that's pretty good. For a college basketball player, that's not very good. Uh, he's averaging 5.5 points a game, 2.8 rebounds per game, and 2.5 assists per game.
Yeah, but he's also shooting
Personally, I see that
27%
as a
from three, and
problem. What?
he's also shooting 27% from three and a horrible 62% from the free throw.
Yeah. So I think if you're behind a name like LeBron, that you should at least perform at a higher level personally, especially at a bigger school like USC. Now, obviously, the Pac-12 this year in basketball isn't very
Been crap.
competitive, um, but USC will eventually be in the Big Ten next year. What's your all's take on Bronny's underperformance?
So, LeBron sent out a tweet the other day, and it was talking about Bronny because he was getting more hate in this past week, I'm pretty sure, than he has all year. And it said something like, "Can y'all please let the kid be a kid and enjoy college basketball? The work and results will ultimately do the talking, no matter what he's decided to do. If y'all don't know, he doesn't care what mock drafts say. He just works, earned not given, or earned not given." So to some degree, I agree with LeBron, but at the same time, when LeBron's saying that Bronny's trying to make a name for himself, and then he goes out and puts up 5 points a game and what'd you say, rebounds? What
Yeah, it's
he was
five point
averaging
five
5.2
points,
and
2.8 rebounds, and 2.5 assists.
yeah, when you go out and do that, shooting on horrible percentages, that's just not backing up, but also to some degree living up to the hype of a name such as LeBron James is it does take a lot of pleasing other people to meet their standards because if you think about when LeBron came in the league, he was facing more pressure than any NBA player has ever. And to repeat, most likely repeat because now LeBron James's name is twice, maybe even 5 times as big now than it was when he was coming in the league. It's just a lot. Now it'd be different if he was averaging 10, maybe 10, 5, and 5, and we could say, oh, maybe he's a freshman, he's getting used to college basketball, coming from or
But five,
always
two,
getting
and
the
two
ball.
is not gonna cut it.
Yeah, he's getting the ball all the time in high school, and now he goes to college and he's getting the ball half the time, and he's putting up 10 and 5 and 5. Then that would be a different story. We could say, oh, it's just his freshman year of college. Maybe next year he'll be better.
Yeah.
But 5, 2, and 2 is not acceptable for
Personally, I think
a
that
name such as LeBron James.
if he were to get drafted, obviously I think he's going to stay another year at least. But personally, I would say if he did go to the draft or whatever after this year, in my personal opinion, I think the only reason that he would get drafted is because of LeBron's interest to play with his son for at least a year. Um, so teams are obviously going to be looking to draft him so they can get LeBron possibly to their team. Not 100% guaranteed, but it's a possibility. Um, so Austin, do you have anything else to add? Not
Touched
really.
on it. I just don't think I think any athlete, it's hard for them, especially if your dad played in professional basketball. It's hard for any player to come out of under the shadow of someone like that. An example of what I'm trying to say about that is, I think it was 2 years ago, Scottie Pippen Jr. He was a great player in college. Played for Vanderbilt. Yeah,
Same with Shaq's son.
yeah, he played for Vanderbilt. He was really, really good in college. And he kind of lived up to more than expectations of, but he was like, oh, he's Scottie Pippen's son, like he's not the only reason that's the only reason he's going to get drafted, and it wasn't because he actually showed up his skills and stuff like that in college. And you can make an example of Shaq's son. There's I think what's his name is coming into the
Sharif.
league, but
Are you talking about Sharif? The one
no,
that's already gotten drafted, or
I'm
the other
trying
one?
to Dwayne Wade's son or someone else whose son was going into basketball or college basketball, but anyone who's trying to outlive their
Father's legacy or
father's
such name.
legacy, it's kind of, especially, it's even harder to outlive arguably the second, or you could argue first or second, whatever you want, because I know you're biased. You could argue, he's outliving the shadow of one of the best or greatest or
Yeah, that'd probably be
professional
like one of the
basketball
hardest
players that's
things to
ever,
do.
huh?
Yeah,
So that'd probably be one of the hardest things to do, having that big ass chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, and it's hard to just go out there and play your game because everyone's like, "Oh, you have to fit the mold and the expectations that your dad is," because your dad was arguably the greatest high school basketball player that's ever been seen in entire
I'd say
history.
probably Carmelo.
No, I'm talking about high school, not college. He didn't play college, and he was one of the only players that came straight out of high school and got drafted in the NBA. Now they don't have that rule anymore, but he was, or at the time that he was playing, he was the greatest basketball prospect that we had ever seen. And Wembanyama is also probably could arguably live up to that hype at some point, but that's a topic for another day. But it's kind of hard to create your own name for yourself when you're related to the person who basically cemented himself in the Hall of Fame of college or not college of professional basketball, and it's really just difficult to kind of do that. And so I understand why he hasn't really been success. I mean, he's not even the best player on his team. There's two guys on his team that were higher ranked than him in the draft, not the draft class, the high school rankings. So he's not even. I mean, one of them's hurt, but so he's that's why he's gotten an influx of minutes. But he hasn't really found his groove. I mean, he's playing in a conference that's very weak, not very competitive. So he's not really getting the best competition at night in and night out. And so he's just trying to find his groove. And I understand that it's playing college basketball is not easy. And he's a decent basketball player. I don't see him going pro this year. I really don't see him going pro next year. I feel like the only reason he's going to get drafted it's because of his last name. And it sucks because every kid's dream is to want to, especially those who go and play college basketball, every person's dream is to want to play for in the NBA at some point. And I know that he's very aware of this, and he knows that he can't really escape that name. He can't escape his last name, and he's not going to. And so the only reason he's pretty much probably going to get drafted, even if he's averaging 5 points a game per season, is because of his last name. And people are going to want to say, hey, if he gets drafted to the league, guess who's going to come play with him? His dad. So we're going to get
yeah,
the LeBron James on our team if we draft him. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
that's kind of
In
how.
some way, I think what's best for Bronny would be to play all 4 years, maybe three, get higher in the
But
draft,
I
and
think I think he'll play three, or I think he'll play two.
yeah,
I think he'll stay this year, and the two stars on the USC team will probably go into the draft, and he'll be the lone star that's left. Plus, the Pac-12 is dissolving anyway, so he's going to a better conference. It's going to the
yeah.
Big Ten, I think.
But I think he definitely should stay another year at least, make a name for himself in college, at least somewhat of a name, get drafted, and God knows what will happen from there. All right,
But
well, I hope y'all enjoyed our first podcast. If y'all did, please give us a like down below. We would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you all are new. You can always change your mind later. It'll always help us out. And give us your takes down below. Peace.